Hi, guys, and welcome to the Android and Me podcast. I am Nick Gray, your host, and we are recording for the week of May 25th. Tonight we have a bare bones crew. It's just me and Brooks for now. Doctor, how are you?
I'm doing so well. How you doing, Nick?
I'm doing excellent. We're recording a little bit late tonight. Right now it's 10 o'clock Central. We pushed the time back, so maybe we could get Sean on. And Dima has decided to leave us stranded on the roadside. So we're going to power on without them, and hopefully they'll be able to join us in a little bit. If not, who cares? They can be on the next one.
Yeah, screw them. I've never talked with Sean before via Hangouts or any other way. I mean, on email and stuff I have. But
Yeah,
I'm hoping I'll get on.
it's funny, the dynamic of a blogging team. Everyone's in different time zones. Everyone lives in different cities, and usually the only time that we actually meet is, if somebody's in another city covering an event, or if we all go to a press conference or something like that. So usually, I haven't met you in person. I haven't met Dima in person. Nick, I've met Sean. I haven't met Dustin either, even though Dustin's been writing for the site for what 4 years now. So
Now that I've moved down to the Bay Area, I haven't been a bad person. I haven't met up with Dima yet. I kind of feel like a jerk.
How far do you guys live from each other?
I think it's actually probably a couple hours, depending on the time of day. But he lives like on the other side of the bay, and I live actually kind of far away from the bay, so that I can afford life.
So you can afford to actually live there.
Yeah, I wouldn't really consider where I live the Bay Area, but I commute into the Bay Area.
Yeah, you got to do what you got to do. It's ridiculously expensive. I've got family out there, and I get out there maybe once a year, just for a couple days, and I love the area. The weather's gorgeous, people are nice. I just need like 4 more jobs in order to live there.
Tell me about it.
So, well, we're not here to talk about the real estate market for the Bay Area. That would be interesting, but not sure how much I would actually know. You might actually know more than me since you live there now. But we're here to talk about Android. So,
We are.
the biggest news of the day today is Tuesday, and LG unveiled the new LG G3. A phone that has been leaked and rumored for the last couple months, honestly since the HTC One M8 was unveiled in late March. Starting right after that, it's been a constant barrage of rumors and leaks and specs and pictures and videos and LG's websites posting things before they're supposed to go up, accessories, more accessories. And from everything we've heard, it's going to be a massive phone. It's going to be something that's going to hopefully take over the market, at least in LG's world. But the way it comes down, it's a new device sporting a 5.5-inch QHD display. That's Quad HD. That's 2,560 pixels by 1440. 2.5 gigahertz Qualcomm 801 processor, 13 megapixel optical image stabilization camera with a laser autofocus sensor on the back, 2 megapixel front-facing camera, 16 gigs of RAM, 16 gigs of storage or 32 gigs of storage, micro SD slot up to 128 gigs. List goes on. 2 gigs of RAM or 3 gigs of RAM, depending on the model that you choose, and then a 3,000 milliamp removable battery, Android 4.2, 4.4.2, LTE, NFC, and multiple colors. They're showing it off in pink, silver, white, gold, moon violet, whatever color that is, burgundy red. And that's essentially it. I mean, I think LG shot for outperforming the competition on every single level on the spec sheet, and they succeeded. The question is it actually going to matter?
It's a good question, Nick. I mean, the G2, I mean, I think that was a pretty monster of a device itself. I mean, it was the first device with the Snapdragon 800. You know, it's got those teeny weeny pretty little bezels. You know, and I don't think it really made a dent. I don't see a lot of people using those, but again, I feel like it's pretty consistent that the LG pumps out some gnarly hardware compared to the competition, and it doesn't seem like it's enough most of the time. But I feel like a lot of the people that really want you know, a beast under the hood, that they're excited about it. I mean, I thought the LG was cool. If there wasn't like the Nexus 5 or maybe a few other devices, I'd be really into it, and I'd probably be into it more than the S5 or the. I know you're probably gonna read me, but the HTC One. I don't know. It's kind of
blasphemy. How dare you?
I'm a hardware guy. I'm not. I'm not so amused by the aluminum, but yeah. But so, do I think it'll make a dent? I don't know, but I hope it will. I'd love it to.
Well, this is where I think HTC and LG are maybe in kind of the same bucket. Is both of them have these great devices. The G3 looks really nice. It actually looks like it has a metallic finish, but LG is saying it's a polycarbonate with a particular finish that makes it look metallic. It's not actually aluminum like the HTC One and 8. But I think they're in the same bucket. They create these great-looking devices. The spec sheets look really good. And there was nothing wrong, really, with the G2, except for maybe LG's software, which is always... They're trying to imitate Samsung a little bit too much. The new software on the G3 looks nicer. It's more simplified.
I like the flat like widget look. I don't know. I'm kind of a sucker for like the flat icons, the flat widgets. I
was gonna say. I mean, you're doing all your icon pack customizations and all that on your devices, and I think the look that they're going for is kind of right up your alley, isn't it?
I think so. I think it but I mean, that again, maybe I'm really weird. It doesn't appeal to me because I'd go ahead and change it anyway. So, but I like the look that they're trying to go for. Does it appeal to the masses? I don't know. I mean, do you like it? Do you like the flat look?
Honestly, I do like what they've done. I mean, the look is actually better than what Samsung has done. My issue is they've taken things a little bit overboard. I've watched a couple hands-on videos of the device, and you know, jumping into the settings menu and even the controls at the bottom of the display with the on-screen buttons, they're changing colors. The things they just look out of place. You know, it's not that it's bad. It's just different than what we have come to expect with stock Android or, you know, even any other manufacturer that's done on-screen buttons. And it's, as I said, it's not necessarily bad. It's just odd. And so when you look at, you know, when you go to a screen and it's a full screen application and the buttons at the bottom of the screen, they get a white background instead of a black background, it's just a little bit off-putting, I think. So I don't know. And, you know, it's one of those things, software is one of those things that a lot of people are really picky about, and it's hard to judge it until you've actually had a chance to use it, and I'll admit I have not had a chance to use it yet. So
that's true. But that's one thing I got real sick of using. I was a big Samsung fan, and I kind of I think they stuck a little bit. They stuck to their little look a little too long, and it got old really fast. I mean, I just felt like I was still using Gingerbread. I don't know, like 6 months ago, or I don't know how long ago, but it just didn't change. And I'm glad that they're trying new looks. But yeah, I don't know if it's. I haven't actually watched the any videos yet. I haven't had any time today, so any hands-on stuff. But I should.
So
So I have more of an opinion.
one of the differentiating factors that LG is going for is, hey, they've come out with a new flip case like everybody else on the planet. But this one here actually has a circular panel that's cut out into the front of the flip case. If you've seen any pictures of the Moto 360 with its circular display, it's very reminiscent of that. And if you get a chance to look at some of these videos, I highly recommend it. They have, the regular clock faces for it that are circular, they're animated, and it actually looks really, really nice. It looks really premium. And in that display, though, they'll have other notifications. You actually can launch into 6 or 7 different LG apps to view notifications or messaging on it. And then, like, there's this circular animation around the circle that kind of makes it look like it's glowing. There's this animated circle that goes around, and it looks very futuristic. I honestly think it's probably one of the best things about the device. I would think that's a huge selling point. I mean, for me, everyone that with the HTC One M8, they have the dot view case, which kind of gives you this dot matrix view, and you can control the device through it, and it's kind of retro. And everyone who sees that is very impressed, and I think something like this is going to come off as a positive for LG. You walk into the retail store and you see the phone, it has this case on it, and immediately it pulls your eye towards it. So if you get a chance to take a look at it, it's simply amazing.
I'll have to. That's cool that you like it. I mean, I just after seeing that dot view case on the M8, I think that's so cool, and I'm so jealous of it. I wish I could have it on my phone. But
well, you just need to buy the One M8. There you go. Then you can have it on your phone.
Looking at the leaks of the G3 case, I just thought it was a total ripoff of the S5, and both of them these giant little windows. I thought they looked kind of silly, but if they were able to pull off some cool features with it, then kudos to them. That's pretty cool. I'm excited to check it out.
Well, and it comes to one of those things that, everyone's got software, everyone's got accessories. What do you make to make your device a little bit different from the competition? And yeah, Samsung kind of invented the category of these, flip cases with a panel on them. And LG copied them last year on the G2 with some of theirs. But then they decided, let's change it up a little bit. And, just changing it from a rectangle to a circle makes a huge dramatic difference on the aesthetic side. And then, the way the software interacts with it, it's different. We're used to technology being square. And when we see technology in a different form factor, that's when it's not that hard. It's just different, and it grabs your attention.
It'll go with your Moto 360 watch.
Yeah. So, what would you give to have 3,000 milliamps in your battery on your phone? What would that mean to you?
I mean, it'd be really awesome. I wouldn't complain about it. I'm at this point in my life at a desk all day, pretty much, and so it doesn't matter to me at all. I have a nice wireless charger sitting on my desk, a Tilt Voo, and I love it. And so my phone just sits there and wirelessly charges when the wireless charging works. Mine's broken right now. I actually have a warranty. I haven't even opened it yet. I have a warranty Nexus 5 right here, so I'm about to bust that out tonight and root it and stuff. Anyway, okay, because that's the first thing you do with the Nexus device. But anyway, but a giant battery would obviously, to a lot of people who are away from desks, and not everybody works at a desk and not everybody likes to. For some people, I think they'd rather swallow a shotgun. And so I think a 3,000 milliamp battery is a big deal. People love their, the Note series because they're giant batteries and they last forever. That's a big deal to, I think, a big group of people.
Well, and I'm in the same case as you are. I mean, I sit at a desk all day long, and theoretically I should be charging my phone throughout the day, but honestly, I rarely do. And it could be that I don't have wireless charging on the One M8.
That's probably why.
And that's one of the reasons why I really want wireless charging to become, a de facto standard for all mobile devices. Because I have a device and I simply don't want to pick my phone up, plug it in, use it, pull it off the charger to use it for a couple seconds, and then plug it back in. And like I'm up and down from my desk for meetings throughout the day. I don't want to put it up and down, plug it in every single time. It simply becomes annoying. And that's one of the things that is nice about the G3 as well. It has wireless charging built in. So not only do you get 3,000 milliamps, but for those who are like you, who love your wireless charging, another little notch on the spec sheet for you.
I almost feel silly how much more convenient wireless charging feels to me than than plugging the phone in. I've been such like a pouty little baby lately, having to plug my phone in and like having to carry around my charger because I'm just like not prepared for it.
You're such a snob.
I am.
Wireless charging stuff.
It's so convenient. You just pick up my phone, I put it down, and it charges. I don't have to get it wrong the first try because the Nexus 5 port's upside down from every other device, and I get it wrong every time. Anyways, it just works. I just put it down, and it works, and it's charging. And then I pick it up, I use it, and I put it back down. It's so easy to use. But so yeah, that's a big deal. Like that is an important spec for me. So that's a +1 for the G3 for me. Again, I've already said it. I really hope that they make I don't know. I'd be super stoked on a Play Edition, Android Silver, whatever G3. Or maybe I need to go unlocked or Developer Edition. I don't know. But if it was the cheaper price than $700, that would probably be the first spec that would be important to me right now.
Yeah. So one of the things that the G3 has that's setting it apart from the competition is its display. It's actually one of the first Android smartphones, or the first Android smartphone with a quad HD display, giving it a PPI pixel density of over 500 pixels per inch.
534.
534, and that's ridiculous. I mean, I have the HTC One. Last year's One M7 actually had a better PPI over the One M8 simply because it was 1080p display at 4.7 inches versus 5 inches, and that was 400. I think it was 443 or something like that. And you can try as hard as you want. You can put your eye, just the right distance from the display till your vision goes blurry, and you can barely pick out a pixel on that. And I don't know what you're going to do with those extra pixels, making it over 500 pixels per inch. I mean, we all know that Apple's Retina display, their perfect resolution was a bunch of bull. But when is too much too much? I mean, this many pixels in such a small display. I mean, it is a large display for a smartphone, 5.5 inches, but this amount of pixels per inch is, to me, it's just overkill.
Yeah. I wonder if it's one of those situations where until you start using it, you don't realize how awesome it is. I just remember going from, the Galaxy S2 to the Galaxy Nexus. That stuff, even though the Galaxy Nexus display wasn't by any means a pretty display, but 720p made a big difference. And then, and now when I love my wife's Moto X. It's a cool device. I love the size, but when I look at that display, it bugs me. I feel like I'm using a Galaxy Nexus again. The display is probably a little better, but it's still 720p. It feels old. Doesn't feel new. Doesn't feel pretty. And I wonder if if we get these quad HD, this crazy 500 PPI displays, and we're gonna go back to our 1080p displays and be like, ew, this isn't 534 pixels per inch. This isn't This isn't awesome anymore.
I need my 534 pixels per inch, my wireless charging, and my laser autofocus on my smartphone. It's
So
ridiculous.
so did anybody talk about what that laser autofocus does? Is it for any time of the day? Is it for nighttime use? I haven't kind of
It's for
gotten into what that is for.
It's for anytime use. So typically when you have autofocus technology, most smartphones have autofocus technology these days, and they use the lenses to create focus for the image, and it takes a while because it's kind of hit or miss. So like you'll start at one end of the spectrum and it'll focus to the other end of the spectrum and move in between till it finds the focal point. And if you have fast motors, it can do it really fast because it goes in and out really fast. But with the laser can calculate the distance from the phone to the object that's supposed to be in focus, and then it simply tells the lens where it should focus rather than trial and error. So theoretically it should be faster, but it's also better for low light scenarios. When, like, I have my 1M8, which takes really good pictures in low light, but at a certain threshold, the phone can't focus anymore because there's not enough light for it to find something to focus on. If I just snap the picture, it'll be out of focus, but once it's captured, there's a lot of light in the picture. And I'm like, well, that's completely useless if you're not going to focus on anything. So the 1M8, you can do manual focus, so you can manipulate it that way. But in kind of a pitch dark scenario, it's not going to work unless you're going in and doing manual focus. So
Do you think you can? Go ahead. Sorry, I didn't cut you off.
It'll be interesting to see if this laser autofocus will actually improve timing. I'm sure people are going to start lining up smartphones and seeing which one can focus faster. This one was 0.3 milliseconds faster than the other. Like, it makes a difference.
I have two things to say. I think it's awesome when companies are playing catch up a little bit, and not that hardware-wise, but sales-wise. It's like HTC and LG have to come up with something better to compete, because just advertising, they've already lost. Basically, people already have the Samsung Galaxy series are out there. The people using them are enough advertisement. It's like, my buddy has an iPhone, my buddy has a Galaxy. That's a big deal. But so this laser, this new display laser. I mean, that's awesome. My phone has lasers. I hope you can change the camera sound on it from like a shutter sound to like a pew pew.
That would be awesome. I'm sure that's going to be one of the first mods. If someone creates a mod for the phone, like, it's going to be out tomorrow.
Yeah, I hope so. But this is cool to see Samsung has been playing it safe for the last. I mean, they've come out with dual camera things, or they've obviously done enough to keep up. But I feel like their phones are safe compared to what LG just put out today. And it's cool. It's cool to see what companies can do, and hopefully, as we start getting these in our hands, we see that hopefully they put it together in a package that's smooth and works. Because LG's had its hiccups in the past. Because like I said, they had the first dual core Android device. With the Optimus 2 or the G2X. That phone stunk. I was on the poor end of that one.
I think a lot of people were kind of turning people off to LG.
Yeah, but I think they're turning it around. I've loved my Nexus devices, which were LG hardware and not software, but hopefully they can put together a complete package. That'd be great.
Yeah, and looking at the phone, looking at the specs, looking at the carrier support that they're lining up, they're supposed to be launching on AT&T, Sprint, T-Mobile, and Verizon here in the U.S. Later this summer. It seems like end of June is going to be when the U.S. launch is going to unfold. Verizon's probably going to get it a little bit later than that, since their information simply says this summer with quotes around it. But the phone's actually launching in Korea, I believe, starting tomorrow. We still don't have pricing for the U.S., but based off of the specs and the size of the phone, do you think this is going to be a $199 on contract, or do you think this is going to be in the same ballpark as the Note 2 or the Note 3, which kind of came to market at a $250 price point?
Yeah, and I don't know. I hope it comes. I mean, if it's a what are they comparing it to? Are they comparing it? I mean, if it's going to be an S5, an M8 killer, it's got to be priced the same. Otherwise, it's in a different league. I think people are going to go to the AT&T and say, well, this is a Galaxy S5 and it's cheaper. Why would I go with this LG G3 that I've never heard of?
Because it has lasers.
Yep, but you know what I mean. I think it's interesting. How do you feel about timing? That it seems like LG's not afraid. It seems like HTC and Samsung are in this battle to get the phone out first in the year, but LG doesn't care. If they cared, they'd be throwing it in the mix too at the same time if they thought it mattered. But obviously, they got their own release time, and they'll do it when they get around to it.
Well, and yeah, I mean, LG's never been a huge player in the U.S. market before. I mean, last year's G2 launch was their largest U.S. launch to date, and as we said earlier, it really, the phone was impressive, but it simply hasn't caught on with consumers. But that was released in the fall. I mean, I think it was September that was released, and now it is May, and we're seeing this. The follow-up to it. So I think they've accelerated their launch windows for these devices, for their flagship, and it could be that we roll around next year and they're unveiling this device in early March. Shave off another 2 months off of the release cycle here or there, and get it in the same time frame as the Samsung and the HTC devices.
I don't think it's a terrible idea to launch at a different time, because people's contracts are ending, every day of the year, not just around March or whatever. So, you walk in and do you want this device that's a month or two old, or do you want this device that just came out today? I don't think it's a bad idea to be on a different schedule.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. Like if they waited maybe 2 more months, this would be launching with the Snapdragon 805 instead of the Snapdragon 801. And a lot of these specs are probably really similar to what the HTC M8 Prime is rumored to have. That's also expected to have a Quad HD display. It's going to have 13 megapixel camera, dual camera setup, like the One M8, but with higher resolution. But then it's going to have the Snapdragon 805, which is going to make it 20-30% more powerful, and give it some better battery performance and greater performance across the board. So does it matter that they released it now, or would it have been better if they saved it for a little bit longer?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's kind of with the G2, by waiting, they were able to launch with the Snapdragon 800. And I think that was a huge selling point, being the first device out with the Snapdragon 800. But now they kind of got the same internals as everybody else. And but it does. You can't get 3 gigs of RAM. That could be a difference. The other ones don't have that, right?
Yeah. I guess honestly, it's one of those things that's like, do you really need 3 gigs of RAM?
I don't know. I've never had a device with 3 gigs of RAM, so I don't know.
Yeah, I've got a device with 2 gigs of RAM, and I go and I look, I look to see how much storage is being used on the device, and it's like the only time that I actually use close to 2 gigs of RAM is after I opened up 3 or 4 high-performing games in a row. That's
Yeah.
the only time. Most of the time, I'm sitting about a gig and a half. So we'll see. Anything else you want to cover on the LG G3 before we move on to something else?
Absolutely not. I'm good.
Well, hopefully it'll turn out good for LG and they'll have a good marketing campaign, because that's really what I think killed the G2 before its time. So,
Yeah.
well, speaking of killing things before their time or killing them off completely, NVIDIA has announced that they will no longer be pursuing the Android smartphone segment with their chips. They released, well, over the last couple of years, they've released quite a few chipsets targeted for smartphones and tablets. And you mentioned you had the LG's the G2X running on an NVIDIA chip.
The Tegra 2.
And for the most part, their chips have always been good, except they have not been. And it's kind of this trade-off of, hey, it can do really great things with benchmarks and 3D graphics, but in day-to-day use, it's just horrible. And then there's really no support for software after the fact, and getting it updated to the next version of Android is always a pain in the side. Are you surprised that NVIDIA is pulling out of the Android smartphone sector with their chips?
I'm not. I agree with you. It's just they've always been almost there with performance, and I've had their devices a lot. I mean, I don't know a lot, but like I said, the G2X, the original Nexus 7, which just turned into a dog after a while. I don't know, what was your experience with the HTC One or One X? I mean, sorry,
The One X.
The One X Plus. When I reviewed the One X Plus, I was really disappointed. I thought I was going to get this ripping device, and I don't think it was necessarily the processor. I think there was some other issues going on, but like when I played Granny Smith, it wasn't very playable. It lagged so much.
And that's where I think NVIDIA failed to impress. I think they come to the table with all these chips, well, all these cores in their chips, and they're like, we have a 64-core processor or whatever. You know, the latest Tegra K1 has 192 cores. And you're sitting there thinking, oh my gosh, this thing's going to be amazing. And I was there at CES when they did the unveil of the new chip, and they had it running in their developer tablets and a couple other devices. And honestly, it is really impressive. But for the most part, they're only showing software that has been specifically optimized to run on these chips. You know, they're showing, benchmark apps and other things that were specifically built to run on it. And I don't think they've ever done the legwork to say, hey, we need to optimize for anything, not just software that's optimized for our chip. And that's where I think Qualcomm's completely changed the game or taken the lead, is because Qualcomm it's not terribly impressive in benchmarks, but it gets great battery life, it performs well on gaming, and day-to-day use, it does exactly what you want it to do. And I don't care if it's a Snapdragon 400, 600, 800, 805, they are all fairly impressive. And that's something that NVIDIA simply hasn't been able to do, is deliver something that's impressive across the board no matter what hardware it's on. So yeah, I'm not surprised. One thing to note is that they're not giving up on Android completely. They didn't say that they're moving out of the tablet space. They're also working on Android in the car. systems. They have a couple things set up for that. So we'll still see them around here or there, but it's not going to be something that you're going to be able to buy in your next smartphone. We're not going to see another HTC One X Plus or anything like that anytime soon.
I'm not sad, but I feel bad. I feel bad for them that they didn't work out, But I don't know. I'm happy. I'm happy with the Qualcomm processors. They're killing it right now.
Well, and the one thing that I'm not sad that, hey, we're not going to see an Android smartphone with these chips. I'm sad that there's no competition.
Yeah.
There's MediaTek and a couple other chipsets that are out there. But the problem is there's nobody directly competing with Qualcomm on performance and trying to push the segment forward. And that's kind of scary because Qualcomm technically could sit back and say, hey, we have 97% of the market. No one's competing against us. Why spend all the money in R&D? They could become complacent.
It's a real good point.
So hopefully maybe Intel will step up their game. They've always wanted to get into the Android segment. They've tried a couple times and failed. They have kind of Lenovo in their back pocket that might help them now that Lenovo owns Motorola.
Mm-hmm.
They might get something else for the U.S. market. They've had devices running Intel chips in Asia and other emerging markets, but they've always pitched them as cheaper devices. If they can find something with the adequate performance and battery life to compete with something that's similar to the G3, that would be good.
Maybe Texas Instruments wasn't the Galaxy Nexus running a TI chip?
They were, but I think Texas Instruments they dropped out of the Android segment as well. I think mobile processors in general.
Here's your chance, everybody else. Here's your chance. Step up. Do it. Make something awesome.
Yeah, maybe next time.
Maybe next time.
So, just moving from NVIDIA to Qualcomm, Qualcomm announced that they are creating support in the Snapdragon 805 for dual camera setups, similar to what we saw in the HTC One M8. And they're going to be baking it into the chipset for the 805, making it easy for manufacturers to deploy devices with stereo or depth sensor cameras on the back. Based on that, do you think we're going to see more manufacturers taking HTC's route and producing something similar to the One M8?
Good question. I haven't used the dual camera setup. I thought it was pretty funny how, I don't know, weeks or a month after HTC and Samsung came out with their phones, Google came out with their camera update that let you just kind of move the camera during the picture to get your own blur photos. Not that that's all you can do with the dual camera setup, but how do you feel about the dual camera setup? Do you think it's a staple? Do you think it's going to show up in next year's phones? Is it that good?
I think HTC has proven that it works. There's quite a bit of tweaking that they need to do to the software. But everybody that I've shown it to, especially my wife, my wife just quit her photography business because she's going to go back to her day job. But for most photographers, getting the right shot is more not really about the hardware, but you want to focus on that one section in your image. And yes, there's other manufacturers that do the same thing with capturing multiple images, and Google camera software can do it. But in all of those instances, you have to choose to say, I want to create an image that's going to have a blurry background.
Mm-hmm.
When you do it with the HTC One, it does it for all your pictures unless you're in manual mode or taking a panoramic picture or something. If you're in auto, it's capturing it all the time. And then it gives you the opportunity to blur out the background if you want to, rather than you having to make that decision beforehand. I like it. I use it a lot. Most of my pictures that I post to Instagram, I've enabled the feature on it. It simply makes your foreground stand out a little bit more, and I think it's a selling point, but I think they need to tweak it. But one of the things, like HTC's implemented it in one fashion, and at Mobile World Congress, there was actually a couple camera manufacturers that were showing off concepts similar to what we saw on the dual camera on the HTC One M8. Doing the same thing, but doing things a little bit differently. So they were using two sensors and then combining the data from the two sensors to create an optical zoom effect. So they would have two 8-megapixel sensors and then using that to create lossless zoom and create, essentially, a 12-megapixel image out of two 8-megapixel sensors. So that you can zoom in on it, and then you can actually do other manipulations with that. You can do 3D mapping, things like that. So I think it's interesting. I don't think what HTC is using it for is the only application. There's other things that can be enabled with it. So it'll be interesting to see how it evolves.
I think it's cool that that Qualcomm is watching the trends, and they're gonna try and build chips to that trend, but I am kind of upset that more people aren't working on this always listening thing that the Moto X does. What the heck? That's supposed to be built into this the Snapdragon 800, or it's possible, right? With this Snapdragon 800 chipset. Why are more people doing that? Is it patented or something?
I don't think so. I mean, I think it comes down to nobody really thinks it's that important. I mean, yeah, it's impressive on the Moto X, but the Moto X didn't sell anything. I mean, I think to date they've sold still less than 1 million units. So, the only people that have actually tried it are mainly people like us in the press and, that are talking about it, but no one else seems to be interested in it.
It's the only thing that's like truly hands-free. You could be driving around and say like, "Hey, okay, Google, do this." Boom, and it's done. Like you don't need to. It's safe. It's quick. It's fun. I don't know. I think it's the future, but nobody else does apparently.
Well, and so I think one of the reasons why no one else has done it is because Motorola was using parts of Google Now to implement that, and at the time when they implemented it, they were part of Google. Now that Motorola is owned by Lenovo, that changes the game. Google can say, hey, if your hardware supports this feature, then we can enable it with a new update to Google Now. So, I mean, it could be a standard feature coming to any device with a Snapdragon 800 or higher with a new update to Google Now sometime in the future. Maybe with Android 4.4.3, that's supposed to be announced fairly soon. Who knows?
Anyway,
yeah, I mean, we've seen some really cool features that Motorola has put out, and hopefully some of those will live on once Lenovo is taking control of the company. Maybe I still have my reservations about that acquisition. I could see it as a total failure, but there's hope. Lenovo is flush with cash. They can throw money at it and hopefully make something good out of Motorola.
Are there any other features that you would like to see, like a chip, the processor company built in features for?
That's hard to say. I mean, at this point, we try to imagine what we don't know, and then we start realizing, well, we don't know it because we don't know. So I'm hoping there's people that are smarter than me that are sitting in a lab somewhere trying to dream up new ways to use our technologies. But one of the other features that Qualcomm announced that they're going to support in the 805 is 16 megapixel burst images at 15 frames per second
There you go.
while recording 4K video. So that if that's not impressive, I don't know what is. I mean, that chip's got to be chugging along quite high. Yeah, I don't know any phone right now that can do 16 megapixel shots at 15 frames per second, let alone while doing it while recording 4K video. That's impressive. I don't care what else that chip can do.
It is. That's pretty cool. Also, it sounds like we're gonna need some pretty hefty SD cards on board, or
Oh yeah.
or the return of micro SD card slots being pretty standard or something. Because it doesn't sound like the memory that's going on that's standard on phones right now is gonna last very long.
Well, like I had the Samsung Galaxy S5 for a couple weeks, and actually the first day I got it, I went to a Timberwolves game, and I was recording video to test out the video quality, and then I was like, hey, I'm only recording in 1080p. It's like this thing's got 4K recording, and yes, I have nothing that can show 4K video. But what I realized is 4K video is lossless video if you decide to zoom. So we're sitting there like first or second row of the upper deck, and I start recording video, and I zoom in into the 4K video while recording, and it's simply amazing. Like, it seemed like, hey, now I was in the 15th row instead of row 35. And it's zooming into 4K video, which means I have 4 times the resolution to work with, and my output video was still over 1080p, even though it was zoomed into it. So it's kind of like the Lumia trick that they do with their cameras. They shoot at a higher resolution and they downsample to a smaller image, but they still retain a lot of the quality from that higher resolution. So it'll be interesting to see.
It will. But what will the future bring?
Who knows?
So it'll be over. My bad. I'm ruining this. All right.
So I think that's gonna do it. There was a couple other news stories that were kind of interesting, but not really. Besides the LG launch for today, there really hasn't been a lot in the news over the last week. We're looking forward, to Google I/O coming up in a couple weeks. It'll be interesting to see if we have some new hardware there. Typically, we see maybe a new Nexus device unveiled. The fact that the Android Silver program seems to be pushing the Nexus program to the side, as at least in the smartphone sector. We're not expecting a new Nexus device. Typically those come in the fall anyways. Do you think we're going to see a new Nexus tablet coming our way?
Yeah, and the Nexus 10. We've been waiting for Nexus 10 for a long time. I don't know. I remember last year I had my wallet open. I was ready to purchase whatever hardware they were announcing. I was waiting for like a smartwatch, an LTE Nexus 4. I don't remember what else. I was ready to. I guess I had a lot of cash or something, and I was pretty bummed with. Even though I had heard that the Google I/O was just going to be mostly software, and then I wasn't that excited about the Google Play Edition S4. I don't know why. Anyway, but I'm kind of wondering if this year is going to be a lot the same, because we've had a lot of separate Android Android update announcements, hardware announcements. They haven't been a part of Google I/O. At least they weren't last year, other than the S4 Google Play Edition. And so I guess I'm not getting real excited about a hardware release. Maybe we've been waiting for an Android update. Maybe we might see an Android update, but I don't know. What do you think? Am I squandering?
I don't know. I mean, for me, I've I've never purchased a Nexus device, so well, I'll take that back. I purchased the Nexus One for my wife. That was her. That was her intro to Android. But I've never purchased one for myself. But I'm giddy at the idea of a new HTC Nexus tablet because that's the rumor going around. It's either an 8-inch or a 10-inch device, and it's going to be a premium device according to the rumors. So that gets me excited. I own the original HTC Flyer with the pen input, and I really loved the device for what it was. I mean, 3 years old now. It's archaic at best. I'm actually running Android 4.0 on it, which has actually made it quite useful. But running Android 4.0, it's not official software, so I'd lose my pen support. But I still like the hardware, and I think HTC does a good job on the hardware department. So it'll be interesting to see if those rumors come to fruition and we do see a Nexus tablet from HTC. I don't think it's coming for I/O though. I think that's going to be pushed back a little bit further into the summer. I think last year they unveiled the Nexus 7 2013 edition. Was it mid-July or late July?
I don't remember, but I don't think it was at I/O though. That sounds right.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see what comes out of I/O. Maybe they're just gonna wow us with some new software features that we aren't completely expecting, and that's gonna be enough. Who knows?
Yeah, I forgot about those tablets. So I feel like the rumors that I've heard are that Nexus phones are dead, but in the tablet arena that we're still going to be seeing some. And so I forgot about Nexus tablets. That should be pretty cool. Although I'm loving my Nexus 7 2013. I have two of them. They're great devices. So they'll have to knock my socks off for me to buy a new one right now.
So one question. This is kind of related to this, but a little on the side. With Windows announced the new Surface 3 this week or last week, and they went from having a 16 by 9 to a 3:2 aspect ratio. And for me, that's always what's kind of been odd about Android tablets is, they've always pushed this widescreen form factor, and they make the devices a little bit unwieldy to use. Do you think they would be better served if they actually moved and kind of followed Microsoft's lead on this and going back to a wider display, wider when you're holding it portrait?
Mm-hmm. When I look, so what's the iPad Mini? Is that a 3.4?
I think it's 3.4. Yeah.
I feel like the iPad Mini looks so squatty to me, and it's I don't know if it's wider or not, but it looks. I can't remember. I've never held one side by side with the Nexus 7. I do feel like the Nexus 7 2013 is really it looks long and kind of silly, but this because I think of it's like 16 by 9. Is that what it is? Aspect ratio.
Yep.
I mean, it's easy to hold with one hand, and that was a big difference going from the original Nexus 7 to this newer one. Is my wife could hold this, and she's like 5'1" on a good day.
On a good day, she shrinks with the weather.
Yeah, that happens. But she's not a very big person, and but she can hold the Nexus 7 in one hand. I think if you change the aspect ratio, and obviously we want bigger screens, you're going to get wider. And I think the whole idea of these 7-inch tablets are that you can hold them in a hand. They're really portable. You throw them in your purse. I could fit a Nexus 7 in my back pocket. But I don't know. I know some people really like the what I think is squatty, the 3:4 aspect ratio, and I don't know. I wonder. Listening to the numbers, I wonder what the difference is like in the 2.3 to a 3.4. But that's a good question, though. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know how to answer that question. Apparently.
I thought you would be the perfect one since you own 2 Nexus devices.
I guess I don't love the look of it. I wish there was less bezel on the Nexus 7 2013. I guess there's a reason for all that extra bezel on the ends, but I like the aspect ratio. I think it looks really cool, although a lot of times it's not fully used, like when you're even like with media, watching movies. But anyway.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to wait and see what they come up with. I think I'm actually in Photoshop right now, and I pulled in the G3, and I'm stretching the sides to make it look like maybe it's a 3:2 aspect ratio, and it doesn't look too bad. I don't know. I'm making my own devices now. Making them.
I think it's a good idea. I think so. I've heard it's profitable. I've heard it's easy to get into the phone making market.
Yeah, I'll just start a Kickstarter.
Yeah.
Start a Kickstarter campaign or something. I'll have these out by the summer.
I think it's a good idea.
We don't need a Nexus program. We'll just have the Android and Me edition.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, well, I think that's going to do it for this week's episode of the Android and Me podcast. We were hoping to get Sean and Dima on, but it was just me and Dr. Brooks tonight. So thank you for joining me.
I'm glad I could make it. I'm glad we could have the podcast.
If it wasn't you, it would have been just me, and since I don't like talking to myself, I would have just canceled it. So I want to thank everybody for listening. If you have not subscribed yet to the Android and Me podcast, please do. We are on Stitcher. We are on iTunes, Double Twist, anything else. If you haven't left us a review yet, please do. Let us know what you like, what you don't like. I got a haircut because someone in the last episode last week said my hair was looking shaggy. So
we listen.
Guys. We listen.
We're trying to do better.
It might have been my wife, too, telling me to get a haircut because it had been way too long. But, yeah, leave us a review. Let us know what you think. And
tell a friend.
Tell a friend. Tell your brother. Tell your cousin. Tell everybody. And that's going to be it. Thanks so much. You guys have a good night.
Thanks. Good night.